All right. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology Podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Dorn. And we have a repeat guest with us on today. I think our third repeat. You're never going to catch Anthony. He was on like 5 times. But Tony Natoci is back with us from UMHoops, doing a little bracketology with us during his lunch break on a work trip. We appreciate you jumping on as we try and make sense of all of the bubble carnage right now. Tony, say hi to the people so they can get a glimpse of that beautiful, beautiful background.
Here we are. Yeah, positioning my head right in the center of that pinwheel. Yes, I'm in rainy Seattle, Washington, Big Ten country. We will we'll I know it never gets any easier to say that. But yeah, well, welcome to Championship Week. Thank you again for having me on. Again, yeah, I will not catch Anthony, but this Tony is doing his best. So yeah, happy Wednesday afternoon.
Selection Wednesday. We're going to get a little crazy with it. I think we should dive into what happened on Selection Tuesday. What do we got? The big thing for last night was the Gonzaga Santa Clara game. Graham, I'll let you start out on that one. If it changed anything for you at all, I think you bumped Gonzaga up. I already had them at 11 overall. I think you got them from like 13 to 11, but what did that do for your overall seed list?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I moved him from 13 to 11. I do think Gonzaga is still a little bit light on top end wins, but I now think they have so many wins against quad one that that win percentage is the thing really shining through. So I think it was convincing enough to move Gonzaga up to a 3 seed where they're likely going to stay. I'm now more interested in Purdue if Purdue can hold on to the last 3 seed for me.
Tony, what did that one do for you for Gonzaga and or for Santa Clara?
Yeah, I've got Gonzaga kind of right in where the two of you have them. I have Gonzaga, my last 3 seed, 12 overall. Yeah, it seems like a fairly good landing spot for them. Yeah, I think potentially climbing up if Purdue kind of stumbles a little bit. There could be a bit of movement upwards. Don't really see them dropping to the 4 line, although I guess we'll see what happens. Santa Clara, so I hadn't quite updated. I think I did an update Sunday night, then did one this morning. So now they're off of my last 4 to my last 4 buys, still on the 11 line. They seem pretty safe. Again, it's never completely safe when you're in that territory, but I think they've done enough.
Yeah, I think I have them at 40 overall, and it's hard to see them dropping out at this point. So, I mean, that'll kind of preemptively answer the question about Iowa and Ohio State, whether or not they're still on the bubble now that Iowa beat Maryland today. Now neither of them can take a terrible loss. I mean, you're our resident Big Ten guy for the day. Do you think there's any way either the Hawkeyes or Buckeyes drop out at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only path for Iowa to drop out was to lose today. I guess it turned out to be Maryland, could have been Oregon. That would have been a really, really bad loss at the worst time. Committee's still paying attention. That would have fully counted. But I think getting that one under their belt now, I think at this point, I think they're in. I have them. It's interesting. I have them both on my 9 line. I've seen some projections where Iowa's ahead of OSU. For me, I have OSU 33 overall, Iowa 35 overall. So we'll see. I mean, they may slip down to the top of the 10 line, but I wouldn't. I can't really see a whole lot happening that would move them all the way out at this point. Their metrics are good. They have enough wins. I think they should be okay.
I had to check my own list. I have Iowa at 35 and Ohio State at 36. So both of them 9 seeds, slightly different order, but I mean, they're 9 seeds. The half 6 of one, half dozen the other. Graham, where are you at on those 2, perhaps now formerly bubble teams from the Big Ten?
Yeah, I see it just like you guys do. I have both Ohio State and Iowa coming in at 9 seeds right now. The bracket is useful for that. But I do think Iowa, to me, is a weaker profile than Ohio State. I like Ohio State's profile more. And when I look at a team that could potentially miss, I look at Iowa as the only one with like any possible, 1 in a million shot. I locked Iowa today. I locked Ohio State. I think they're both for sure going to be in the tournament. But if there was like the craziest team to get left out, I could see Iowa. If you like really dug into the profile, it doesn't hold up quite as well as Ohio State's, in my opinion. So I could see Iowa in like the if we had a ton of bid Steelers and then the teams that are on the bubble all went on the craziest runs. But I went ahead and locked both because I do think both are firmly in the field.
Yeah, Iowa.
I could still see. Go ahead, Tony.
Oh no, to say I think the 39 WAB for me, Iowa, it's good. It's in the top 40, but it's getting close. If things move around, that could jitter. And then the two quad 3 losses for the Hawkeyes too. That's again just a little foothold. If things happen, the committee could kind of latch onto that, be like, I don't know, they haven't quite convinced me, but.
I could still see if Ohio State loses that game tomorrow. Like I can't see them dropping out. I could still see them ending up in Dayton just because they would at that point be winless in all 7 of their games away from home against what we assume is the field. At that point, I don't think they've done much on the road. And boy, 3 weeks ago, we didn't even think they were in. I think there's a little bit of a what have you done for us lately? Like we're very happy with Ohio State that they've given us some bubble team that actually wants to be in. But I wonder, comparing their overall resume. Now, granted, all of the predictive metrics, all the resume metrics now have them comfortably top 40. So it's hard to see them dropping out. But I do think the road neutral record could be a little problematic for their seed when all is said and done.
Well, to that point, Kerry, what I
yeah.
think, if it really ultimately came to it, and you have, like UCF sitting there with an Iowa, and the committee's like, what do we do? Who do we take? I don't usually think predictive metrics play much of a role in it, but when you have the predictives that those teams have in comparison to where these other teams might end up, I mean, they're human beings in the committee room. You're probably thinking, I was just a lot better team than UCF. If that's what it comes down to, and they both have equal resumes, give me the team who can actually play basketball a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm doing I already wrote it, but it's like a blind resumes article for tomorrow. I thought about just doing that for today, just throwing blind resumes at you, but I decided to be nice, not do that. But I did compare UCF and Ohio State just to kind of like take a step back from just looking at how it feels over the last 3 weeks, because it feels like UCF is on the bubble right now. I don't even know what the score of their game against Cincinnati is right now, but it feels like they've done everything they can to blow it. But if you just like remove yourself from the recency bias, I still think UCF might actually be a little bit ahead of Ohio State. But we'll see where they end up being when all is said and done. Before we get to the rest of today, we do need to mention, Graham, I'm sorry, Virginia Tech lost last night to Wake Forest. Of course, it came in dramatic fashion in overtime, as only the Hokies know how to do. It looks like you still have them in. I don't know if you just didn't update your graphic and
No,
Indiana or Auburn is in that spot, or
yeah, this is not an updated graphic. I think Virginia Tech is not only out, I don't see a path for them in. I can't eliminate them because who knows what's going to happen over the next day or two. You never know if everybody starts taking crazy losses, but I really don't see a realistic path back to the bracket. I think this was really one that they could not afford to lose. I think people talk about it over the final weeks and months, like, oh, you got to win. It's a must-win game. It's like, no, seriously, like Wake Forest, like really absolutely had to win that one. So I think the Hokies are pretty much
dead. Tony, do you agree? No more Va Tech to worry about.
Yeah, right now I have them my 6th at-large team out. Yeah, I'd be surprised. It was a tough. I guess we'll see. We'll see how Cal does. Stanford falling at the buzzer. Yeah, Virginia Tech. It's. I think it would be a long road back for the Hokies to climb above the cut line. A lot would have to go exactly right. But yeah, let's see. I don't know. Yeah, WAB at 53. I don't know. Kind of across the board, sort of uninspiring. It's a clean team sheet, but just a lot of losses at the wrong time. Ultimately, I don't think they did quite enough out east.
Yeah. So I had heading into the day, I had Virginia Tech was my last team in. Stanford was my first team out, and I think Stanford went from 69 to like off the board. We don't even need to look at them anymore. I still have Virginia Tech. I think is my 3rd or 4th team out. Like that wasn't as problematic of a loss as to Pitt, but they also have no more games to play their way in. They're going to need all sorts of assistance, like you just alluded to. A couple of questions in the chat about Iowa and Iowa State. Mr. Skurs, I guess that's not really a question. Well, yeah, there is a question here. He asked about Nebraska. If Nebraska hypothetically wins the Big Ten tournament, do we even need to worry about what others on the 2 line do? Or would that be enough to get them up to a 2 seed?
Interesting.
What do we think?
I mean,
Graham, what do you think on
Go
Nebraska?
ahead.
I still tend to think it's not quite enough. And I hate to say that because it sounds harsh. But when I look at the wins that Nebraska has that really stand out, it's still just a couple. And at the point that the committee would be making these decisions, they're so far down the road on where these teams are seated. I think it's problematic for Nebraska for two different reasons for looking at teams in front of them. Houston and Illinois have absolutely fantastic predictive metrics. UConn and Michigan State have really nice wins and great records against Quad One. I don't know that Nebraska can really get past either of any four of those teams when you compare it that way. Plus, I think the bigger issue then is they've still got Iowa State in front of them from my perspective. And Iowa State just won by like 50 today. If it wasn't 50, it was like really close to 50. They were dominant today. They could add a win against Texas Tech before Nebraska even steps on the court. So if I'm the committee, I might be like, yeah, Iowa State's fantastic. I'm not moving Nebraska ahead no matter what they do. And I don't think it's, Nebraska not having a great year. I think everybody agrees Nebraska's had a fantastic year. But once you want to break into those really top spots, you need to start to put together the sort of resume that is unassailable. And I still think the Nebraska resume has a couple areas the committee could pick at. So I think Nebraska is a very strong lean for a 3 seed to me.
Tony, what do you think if Nebraska wins the Big Ten tournament?
I mean, yeah, I think we see this year after year with the Big Ten tournament, with a lot of conference tournaments that end on Sunday, even the ones that end on Saturday. I feel like best case scenario, Nebraska goes win against Purdue, win against Michigan State, and then a signature win against Illinois or Michigan on Sunday. But I think the Friday night win against Purdue, hypothetically, to kind of begin the most impressive path towards that banner. It's a feather in their cap for sure, but I don't think. I mean, right now, I have Nebraska behind Iowa State, behind Illinois, behind Michigan State to crack onto the 2 line. I just think it'd be a little bit, it'd be an impressive win, but too late in the process. Nebraska there. Let's see. I mean, non-conference strength of schedule is very low. They have some nice wins. They don't have that many really eye-popping. They have a couple, but I think when you start kind of their efficiency numbers are a little bit lower than some of the other teams in that area. Seems like they're a 3 seed. That's where the committee's going to have them Friday. I don't know if they're going to kind of reopen that book and relitigate them up to a 2. We just kind of move some things around. So yeah, I think I'm in agreement. I think 3 seems about right. It's just, again, too late in the process.
Yeah.
One thing that could potentially help. Sorry, Kerry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
You're good.
One thing that I think could potentially help is if Iowa State loses and then puts Nebraska in the seed list right next to a Big Ten team. And then they can be like, all right, that's just like a very easy switch. Big Ten to Big Ten. We'll just move Nebraska ahead of them.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like they could end up running into, like if they beat Michigan State head to head, that's a pretty easy 2-3 swap. Or if they beat Illinois in the championship. Yeah. And we kind of already touched on the other question, Graham. I don't even know if you have the chat open to see that, but Bram Janvern asked, can Iowa State get to a 2 seed after their, as you said, 49-point win today or whatever? Whatever hope Arizona State had for a bit, it is gone now. But what do we think Iowa State? I think we pretty much unanimously have them at 9 overall, like as an entire bracketology community. Like they're very close, but not quite above Michigan State or Illinois after some of their recent losses. They were the 4th 1 seed on whatever February 21st, for whatever that counts for anymore. That has made me reluctant to drop them too much, but I don't think it matters at this point. But what do you think? Iowa State to a 2? Tony, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I think it's doable. I think the Big Ten teams will start to beat up on each other a little bit. And so I think if Iowa State has a really strong showing in the Big 12 Conference Championship or tournament, then I think the bottom rung of the 2 line seems reasonable. I think it's open. I think it's right now. I would even give it a fairly decent chance. Just across the board, they have a strong profile. That again, going back to that Purdue really eye-popping win that just leaps off the page. Is when this team is good, they are very strong. So I think a 2 is reasonable, but we'll see what happens.
I think there's a good shot at it because they get Texas Tech. If they didn't get Texas Tech, I might not feel so strongly about it. but just having that opportunity to avenge that home loss, that it's on all of our minds, right? At least it's on my mind. Like, oh, that's the big win Texas Tech has without JT Toppin. And I think the committee's going to be thinking a lot about that game. If Iowa State goes out and beats them on a neutral court, maybe convincingly, that could really sway some of the committee members towards Iowa State. And sometimes, to the point we've talked about already, it can be good to play early in championship week, so the committee gets to consider all of those results. If you lose, it can be terrible for you. If you win, it can be really good. So I think Iowa State's got a very legitimate argument for a 2-line if they beat Texas Tech.
I think I agree with that. And just like Tony was saying, like some of these Big Ten teams are going to lose, so that'll open the door if Iowa State does finish strong in the Big 12 tournament. I was hoping we would get some sort of interesting result from this early afternoon slate, but kind of all the favorites held serve. Kentucky got a bit of a scare from LSU yet again. They had to beat LSU on a buzzer beater back in early February or late January, whenever that was. But NC State took care of business. We already mentioned Iowa did, and then Iowa State killed Arizona State. So nothing, no bracket changers yet this afternoon, but plenty of opportunity for it the rest of the day. I have here on my list in the field and trying to keep it that way. NC State was one of those teams. Also, SMU and UCF playing right now. SMU's up 5 on Louisville. I don't see the UCF game, but I know they were down early against Cincinnati. And then Texas at home against Ole Miss. If any of those 3 teams were to lose, which one would have the best chance of still staying in, even with a loss? Graham, I'll throw that one to you.
I think it's UCF. If they lose, they're down 1 right now to Cincinnati at halftime. If they lose this game, we all know Cincinnati's playing really good basketball. I don't think the committee would particularly want to harm them for that one result. I think the committee might want to harm them for losing 4 straight to non-tournament teams. That's a separate conversation. But when you look at the quality wins that UCF has, it still stands out. The WOB score is going to be good regardless of whether they lose or not. They're going to end with a 1-point-something in WOB, even if they lose to Cincinnati. I just have a hard time seeing the committee want to leave out UCF. Not that I just feel like they're a perfect candidate for Dayton, right? That team who's, yeah, they've probably done enough, but they haven't done so much that we want to put them straight in the bracket. They just feel like a Dayton team to me.
What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting getting to the UCF Cincinnati matchup today, and we'll see how the second half goes. But a reader on UMHoops asked me this question. I was kind of furiously typing up an answer before we joined here. And he asked, or they asked, if the UCF Cincinnati game was essentially a playoff game, or an elimination game. And I don't think it is for UCF. But I do think Cincinnati has to win to kind of keep advancing through the bubble and eventually maybe find their way above the cut line. But it does make me a little nervous. If Cincinnati beats UCF today, they would have, I think, a 2-0 head-to-head record against them, home and neutral this year. And if if Cincinnati were to win another game, all of a sudden, if these 2 teams kind of compress a little bit and converge on the seed list, that could be enough. I think a couple things have to happen. It's unlikely, but there is a path there for this result plus another result from Cincinnati to end up kind of being what swaps. And I think this group alluded to it yesterday too, on the podcast. So that's out there. Dangerous for UCF. Obviously, you don't want to lose, but I still think they're okay. But that's kind of a backdoor way that they could be bumped out.
Yeah, I could see them flipping if it gets close enough with the Cincinnati win today. You mentioned they would be 2-0 in the head-to-head, and then UCF got swept by Oklahoma State, got swept by West Virginia. Like, at that point, there's just a question of, how many borderline or not even tournament teams can this team lose to in the last 6 weeks, and we could still be okay with it as a committee. I don't think it's an immediate play out game for UCF, but it does leave them very susceptible. And it could be, I think I have them at 41 right now, and Cincinnati is my 3rd or 4th team out. So it could be a case where it immediately vaults Cincinnati ahead, but doesn't necessarily knock UCF out. Then obviously the winner of this game would get a pretty sweet shot against Arizona tomorrow. That would be the way to clinch it for either of them. What if SMU were to lose to Louisville, though? I think it's kind of similar to what we're saying here about UCF, where it doesn't immediately hurt them, but it leaves that door open to them getting knocked out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think SMU would probably stay in for the time being. I think they're probably eventually going to fall out due to bid thieves if they do lose to Louisville. It would be close either way, but I think they'll probably find themselves out. Back to the UCF Cincinnati thing, though, really quick. I think a lot of bracketologists are convinced Cincinnati has to beat Arizona, and I'm not entirely convinced by that. I think if you just, Kerry, we've talked about it before, the narrative for Cincinnati is about as good of a narrative as anybody's got around the bubble. And if that's the case, if the committee just uses basketball judgment, I could totally see them saying, you know what? We don't really care what the metrics say. We have eyes, and Cincinnati's a better basketball team than UCF. Everybody knew UCF was probably going to lose this game to Cincinnati. It played out exactly the way we thought it would. Cincinnati's just the better team. They weren't together in the non-conference part of the season. Once they came together as a team, we saw how good they are. They're the better team. We're putting them in. I could absolutely see the bracketology community up in arms about Cincinnati getting a bid without beating Arizona, and I actually don't think it's crazy. I think it would make total sense why the committee might want to do that.
Graham Janvrin pointed out that Cincinnati, they split during the regular season. UCF won by 1 at home, and Cincinnati won by 20 at home. So there's that. And this would be the pretty clear, rubber match tiebreaker, if you will, if it's not already in Cincinnati's favor. Going kind of the opposite direction from teams that tentatively could play their way out. I made a list of teams still alive trying to play their way in. Not necessarily that a win today would bring them in, but among those that we haven't already talked about, Auburn right now, I think, is losing to Mississippi State. That would be glorious. Auburn, Indiana, West Virginia, the Cal FSU winner. I don't know if anybody actually thinks FSU has a chance, but if they go and beat Duke, that changes things. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Boise State, at least metric-wise, still looks like they're in the mix, but those metrics don't include the infamous loss to Hawaii Pacific. Anyone from that list? I guess now Indiana I do have in my field. I probably should have put them in the other way, that they are trying to stay in the field, but they're playing Northwestern today. I feel like they have to win that, or else, they could drop out immediately from that one. I think they would probably then fall behind, God help us, Auburn, if they were to beat Mississippi State. But what of those teams kind of on the outside looking in that still have a pulse in their conference tournaments? Who do you think most needs a win today and then tentatively could go on a run? Tony, we'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. This morning I went through my seed list. I scrubbed it, kind of just had it in a pretty good spot. I think sent it to you, and then I was sitting there at the office, and my mind kept coming back to Oklahoma State. I was thinking, the WAB, the resume numbers look pretty darn good. It's a clean team sheet. They have a decent number of quad 1, quad 2 wins. If they beat, I think they're playing TCU tonight, I want to say. If Oklahoma State wins that game, I think all of a sudden my model is really dinging them for, just kind of an uninspiring. They played a pretty easy non-conference and all that, but if they can kind of pick up this extra win, boy, I would be really tempted to put them very close. If they get 2, I think they could get in, but that's a team I sort of forgot about them, and they've come back a little bit from the dead for me. Like, all of a sudden they're my 7th team out. You beat a pretty quality team in TCU. All of a sudden you're way higher. So of that group that you mentioned, I think the Cowboys are looking like they're in kind of a decent spot given where I thought they would be a couple weeks ago.
I'm not entirely sure that they have to beat Kansas if they beat TCU. It might be enough with the way the rest of the bubble falls. We don't know how it's going to fall. But if they did that, I really like, you just start looking at the Q1 and Q2 wins. They were dominant against Texas A&M in the non-conference. So they didn't play a ton of great non-conference games, but they did have some success there. Could also get interesting if they're up against Oklahoma. If Oklahoma finds some success in the SEC tournament, they did lose in Oklahoma City to the Sooners. That one could be really interesting if they're going head-to-head for one spot in the field. But I do think you look at that Oklahoma State team, it could certainly happen. To your point earlier, Kerry, though, I think Indiana has to win. I just look at that profile, and that's the reason I haven't eliminated some teams like Virginia Tech isn't because I think they can really get back in. It's if teams like Auburn and Indiana lose, I can't under any circumstances put that profile into the field. I can, like I can look at some of these other profiles and be like, I don't like it, but I think San Diego State has to go in. I don't like it, but I think Virginia Tech has to go in. I cannot do that with Indiana and Auburn if they lose. It's just not good enough.
So I should have looked this up beforehand, but I feel like when we did our original really kind of deep dive into the wins above bubble, I think Oklahoma State was that team that we were able to get it to. They could end at exactly 0.0 based on, but I think it was the path was they had to go 3-4 and they would end at 0. They went 2-5 and they're at a like 0.01. So they kind of benefited from that. The preponderance of the WOB just kind of changing overnight and things shifting. We don't really know what makes sense on this year's WOB, but they are in theory, the quintessential bubble team right now. They are right there at, replacement level. So I do think a neutral win over TCU, that would get them probably about a 0.5. It would get them into that probably top 45 range. And yeah, I don't even know if they need to then beat Kansas, especially if, like you're saying, we're just looking for anything if Indiana and Auburn then play their way out. Anything else about maybe today's slate or in general that we want to discuss? Tony, I know you need to get back to work soon.
I've got some time. I'll be late for you. I would say, yeah, I mean, just it's interesting comparing. So Indiana's my very last team in, Auburn's my first team out. Looking at I mean, obviously Auburn at 16 and 15. Just from pure wins and losses perspective, it kind of stretches the imagination a little bit, but the metrics, they played a brutal schedule. Obviously, I won't belabor that point, but I'm kind of looking, and I think Auburn, unfortunately, it stacks up a little bit better than the Hoosiers. We'll see. Indiana's got a kind of an interesting stretch here. They lost at home to Northwestern not too long ago. They have to win that game. It's sort of a tough path for them in Chicago in the Big Ten tournament. They need to pick up a win or two to feel pretty safe. So we'll see. But yeah, if I were, I don't know. I think if Auburn can hang on, if Indiana loses, that could be a swap for me. Then a couple Mountain West teams, New Mexico, San Diego State, kind of rounding out those last couple teams just out of my seed list. I don't know. San Diego State's a funny team to me. I feel like, in my spreadsheet, they keep popping up as, oh, this team is really, really close. And I kind of look at their profile. Could be a bias, towards or against the way they play. I don't know, but I'm like, oh, really? I don't know. It's just, but they have this buoyancy, at least in my model, that surprises me. But we'll see. Sometimes those sorts of teams can kind of just sneak in because, like you said, oh, we have to put somebody, and we have to fill that spot with somebody, and the Aztecs are just kind of there. But
I felt that way about. I was gonna say I felt that way all season long about Seton Hall, where it's just, how is this team still hanging around in the metrics and everything? Like, we can't kill them. They have one neutral win over NC State and didn't beat a top 60 team outside of that. But somehow all these, low quad 2 and solid quad 3 wins, I think that's what's keeping San Diego State hanging around too. So maybe WOB doesn't hate the mid-majors as much as we thought. Maybe it's okay with some quad 3 wins every now and then. But Graham, I'll kick it to you, and then we have 2 final questions.
I just wanted to mention that I've read a couple obituaries for West Virginia. I actually don't think they're completely dead. If they get BYU and Houston, all of a sudden I think they're actually probably in the field, alone like a bubble team. I think that's enough to get them in. So really, I would not be writing off West Virginia entirely yet. I'm not convinced they're totally dead. Tough path to beat BYU and Houston, but 2 wins, and I think they're in.
Yeah, we quickly went from this being like the ACC is bubble central to now the Big 12 is bubble central because the ACC decided it doesn't want to be bubble central. I think we've got all these like whoever won the Arizona State Baylor game was going to be interesting no matter what. Same with the Cincinnati UCF game, and I'm with you on West Virginia. We already mentioned Oklahoma State, so yeah, the Big 12 could get interesting for an 8th or maybe even a 9th team. The first question in the chat from Mr. Skurs, and it's not a bracketology question. He just said, who do you guys think you will pick to win it all in your bracket? I'm going to go first and say Arizona. I had been leaning that way for a couple of weeks, and then Michigan lost LJ Kaysen. Duke, we have, at least for the presumable, for the immediate future, Caleb Foster's out. Pat Youngba's not playing probably in the ACC tournament either, so I kind of feel like Duke's ceiling has fallen as well. So I think I'm even more comfortable taking Arizona, even though it is Arizona and they never make the Final Four. Tony, Mr. Michigan, who are you picking?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, who's viewing this live stream? Am I going to offend anybody? I think. I mean, it's kind of it's an interesting question. Who will I pick in my heart of hearts versus maybe who will my bracket selection pick in pursuit of maybe winning a pool? I don't know. It's kind of a different sort of question, different kind of angle there. I mean, I don't know. Michigan, Duke, Arizona, Florida. I mean, to me, it's the top of the sport is so good. Florida's been there. Defending champions are playing really, really well. If they continue to look good through the SEC tournament, it would be tough to pick against them. Obviously, Michigan's talented. Duke's talented. A couple injuries. We'll see kind of how that unfolds. I don't know. Arizona, to me, is kind of an interesting team. They don't really shoot any three-pointers, I think. They've had some pretty spectacular meltdowns in March over the last several years. I don't know if I really trust them, but if ever there's going to be a year, they've looked amazing. So hard to say. But if you had to pick out, I guess I would go Michigan over Florida in the final. But I could see it unfolding a number of different ways among that kind of upper crust.
Graham, you going with Darren Peterson all the way?
I'm going with the Michigan Wolverines. Back in November, I remember tweeting out something. It was from the Vegas tournament, and I remember typing something to the extent of, "Doesn't it seem like we're going to see this same scene in April?" And I haven't really felt differently than that all year. Even when they lost to Duke, I just kind of feel like it's Michigan's year. Arizona, to Arizona's credit, I think they are a little bit more. I don't know if recession proof is the right term, but if things go south for them, I think they're still in great shape, right? Like, it's hard to upset Arizona. I think it's a little bit easier to upset Duke and Michigan than it is Arizona. So I think they're maybe a more sure bet to get to the Final Four, but to win the thing, I think Michigan's my team.
I 100% agree with that. Like, if I had to pick just one team to make the Final Four, I think it's Arizona. But I might get to that point and be like, oh, I kind of like this Florida team a little bit better. They can at least shoot threes recently. But yeah, it's going to be tough. Hopefully it's not as chalky as last year, but we'll see. And then I had a different question going back to Auburn. Just the possibility of a 16-loss team. If both Auburn and Indiana were to lose tonight and just like nobody else plays their way in, and we, by some horrible circumstance, we have to pick between those two, either 18-14 Indiana or 16-16 Auburn. Obviously, we've never seen a 500 team get in. I kind of feel like I'd rather see Auburn get in because they at least scheduled. I feel like if this Indiana team gets in with this resume, it's going to tell every major conference team, we don't care if you play 8 home games against teams outside the top 250. If that's how you have to get to 5 games above 500, thank you for doing that. And I worry about what that does for the sport moving forward. I don't know where you guys feel about that. I know we're all kind of just inclined to pull against Auburn because of Bruce Pearl's hatred of Miami, Ohio, or whatever. But what do you think of that? If it did come down to that, if you had to choose between Indiana and Auburn and they both lose today, which way would you lean bracket wise, and which way would you want to see it go if it's not the same? Graham, let's throw that one to you.
It's the same. I have Auburn in the field right now, and I will say they scheduled tough. They won at Florida. Who do I think is the better team? I think it's probably Auburn. They don't look great all the time, but Indiana doesn't look great all the time too, and they've gotten a lot of opportunities. If Indiana loses to Northwestern, they're going to be 6-14 against the first 2 quads. I would much rather take an Auburn team that's at least proven they can win sometimes against quality competition compared to an Indiana team that basically never does, and their entire resume is beating up on quad 3 and quad 4. Give me Auburn in that scenario, but more likely, to my point earlier, That's why I'm not eliminating the Virginia Techs of the world, because I would
Yeah.
take them over either of those teams if that's what it came down to.
Yeah, Indiana would be 6-14 against what you said, quads 1 and 2, or is that even quad 3 as well? I think it's quads 1 and 2, but I know Auburn is 6-12 against the projected field, so I would take that over 6-14 against quads 1 and 2. But Tony, take it away, bring us home.
Yeah, I mean, they say that, or at least the committee has said, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that wins and losses shouldn't technically matter. It's who you've played, who you've beaten, your whole body of work. It's not just a raw, wins and losses score. In practice, we've seen over the years that it hasn't quite worked out that way. But yeah, I mean, I think comparing Indiana and Auburn right now, if it were up to me, I think I would probably put Auburn in. They have, that ace in the hole in their back pocket, that win in Gainesville kind of trumps everything that Indiana's done and realistically could do. Auburn hasn't just scheduled a tough schedule. I mean, they've played the very, very top, these 1 seeds, 2 seeds, really, really good teams. Yeah, they haven't beaten that many of them, but they've beaten a couple. And so, yeah, I agree, with what the two of you are saying. I think if there's a message to send, it's, hey, schedule tough games, challenge yourself. Don't just try to race to 20 wins or 19 wins or whatever on kind of a cupcake schedule. So we'll see. I still kind of have a hard time believing at 16-16 that they would make it, but it would be interesting, and I wouldn't completely hate it for kind of some reasons that we've mentioned. So.
I remember during the post-COVID year, when everybody's non-conference was a little truncated, like I think it was Maryland was like 10-11 in mid-February, and we still had them projected for a bid because you don't have to be 500. You don't have to have a winning record. It just so happened that they had a good enough profile. I think they did end up getting a 10 seed, but they also finished 3 games above 500 when all was said and done. But yeah, there's no mandate that you have to have a winning record. It's just that history has shown that it's hard to build up a good enough profile without having a record 3 games above 500. But that will go. That'll finish us up. Let's get you back to work in rainy Seattle, the Big Ten country as it is. That cracks me up. But thanks, Tony, for jumping on with us. We've got a whole lot of more bubble action to watch tonight. But until next time,